Hey guys, so today's video is one that I had not had written down for some reason, but is something that has always been close to my heart, and just a case that I wanted to talk about. It's not a true crime case. Well, not necessarily. Some people might think it is, and maybe I'll touch on that at the end, but I wanted to talk today about the death of Princess Diana. Now, before I go into that whole story, I have to shout out my husband, Scott, because he knows how much I love Princess Diana and how much I've followed the royal family my whole life. I wouldn't call myself like a royalist, or I don't know where I stand on the politics of the royal family. I'm sure it's a complete waste of money. I do believe that. However, there is sort of, especially as an American, I think there's a lot of reverence to, like, holy crap, they're royals, you know, like we don't have anything like that over here. So it's just really cool. I really like the, I was explaining to Scott yesterday, or not yesterday, the other day, how cool it is that, like, it's weird, let me start that out, that how they're all related, but it's cool when you can look back at history and be like, holy crap, that person's related to that. Like, I was explaining to him the other day how Prince William and now his kids are blood related to Anastasia, like the missing princess in Russia, the the Grand Duchess Anastasia, yeah, that's right. Which is a whole other story that I've always loved. But they, when they found her body, which it actually probably wasn't even her that was missing, it was one of her sisters. Who was it? Olga, Tatiana, and I think it was the one that I'm not remembering. Shoot, I know this. And knowingly, I think it was her younger brother that was missing as well. It was actually two bodies, but for some reason the lore of Anastasia just took off. But they did find two like sets of bones, bone fragments and stuff like that sometime within the last decade, and they tested Prince Philip's DNA to compare it to all of them. I think they had previously done that, like in the 90s or something, when DNA first became like a big thing. They had compared his DNA to the 5 bodies that they had previously found. I'm sorry, I'm rambling now about Anastasia. But they had compared his DNA to them, and it was a match, I think. But I know they had compared his DNA to the girl who claimed to be Anastasia. They compared it to her remains, and it wasn't a match, so she wasn't Anastasia. Anywho, I'm sorry, this was 3 minutes talking about Anastasia. I'm doing a really good job. Let's get started. If you want to hear all about Anastasia, I'll tell that in a whole other video. So, on the night of August 30th, 1997, which was a Saturday night, Princess Diana, who I don't believe her title was princess anymore. I know she was no longer an HRH, but I don't know which is her Royal Highness. I don't know if they dropped the princess or not. She was Lady Diana Spencer before she married Charles, so she was already a royal. Like, it was a big deal when Will married Kate because she was a commoner, because they've all married royals. But for the purpose of this, I'm going to call her Princess Diana. Princess Diana left Sardinia on a private jet Saturday, August 30th, 1997, and arrived in Paris with Dodi Fayed, who was the son of Mohammed al-Fayed, who actually owned the Hotel Ritz in Paris, where their night sort of ended. Not ended, but the last pleasant part of their night ended. They had stopped there en route to London, having spent the preceding 9 days together on board Mohammed al-Fayed's yacht in the French and Italian Riviera. Henry Paul, the deputy head of secretary at the Ritz, had been instructed to drive the hired black 1994 Mercedes-Benz W140. In order to elude the paparazzi, because Diana was hounded by paparazzi at this point. Well, she had been for probably a decade at this point. A decoy vehicle left the Ritz first, and a lot of the photographers followed that one. Well, if you know anything about paparazzi, they are very smart. They know stuff like that is going to happen. It's amazing that they knew back then this stuff was going to happen, but she was a royal, so obviously they had to know that safety protocols would be in place like that. Diana and Fayed then departed from the hotel's rear entrance around 12:20 a.m. on the 31st of August. So this is early Sunday morning, headed for an apartment nearby that was owned by Dodi's father, Muhammad. They were the rear passengers in the car. Trevor Reese-Jones, a member of Fayed's family's personal protection team, was in the passenger seat, and the occupants were not wearing seatbelts. I've seen a documentary years ago. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but they actually touched on how if they had been wearing their seatbelts, Diana would have most likely survived this incident. If not been maybe through, I don't know, extensive surgery or something, been able to have been rescued. After leaving the Rue Cambon, I'm apologizing now because I'm going to butcher all of these French words. I don't know any French. I'm not good at French, so I'm so sorry. They left the Rue Cambon and they crossed the Place de la Concorde. They drove along Cours de Lorraine, Cours de Lorraine and Cours Albert first. Let me grab him really quick. They drove along the Cours Lorraine and Cours Albert first, the embankment road along the right bank of the River Seine, into the Place de la Alma underpass, where everything went down. At 12:23 a.m., Paul lost control of the vehicle at the entrance of the tunnel. The car struck the right-hand wall and then swerved to the left of the two-lane carriageway, so over 2 lanes, before it collided head-on with the 13th pillar that supported the roof of the tunnel. The car was traveling at an estimated speed of 105 kilometers per hour, which is 65 miles per hour if you're American, and that was over twice the tunnel speed limit. It then spun and hit the stone wall of the tunnel backwards, finally coming to a stop. So they were going so fast, they hit the wall, hit here, and turned around and hit with the back of, they actually didn't even hit with the back of their car, they just hit it backwards. So they tapped the wall, and I'll touch on, there might have possibly actually been a car that they collided with, but they tapped on the wall, then the head of the car hit the pole, and then the car spun so far around that the front driver's side of the car hit the wall backwards. That's where it sat during the rest of the night until it was cleaned up. Let's see. The impact caused substantial damage, especially to the front half of the vehicle, as there were no guardrails between the roadway and all of the pillars. And if you've seen the tunnel, these are big concrete pillars. I mean, it's insane that it's insane that there wasn't anything blocking it for something like this happening, because even going 35 miles an hour, if someone hit one of these pillars, I mean, this is like dangerous. I don't know if they've put up rails since. I would assume so. I hope so. The witnesses who arrived shortly after the incident reported that photographers on motorcycles swarmed the Mercedes sedan before it entered the tunnel. So they were being chased and hounded by these paparazzi. With the 4 occupants still in the now wrecked car, the photographers, who had been driving slower and were some distance behind the Mercedes, reached the scene. Some rushed to help, tried to open the doors and help the victims, while some took pictures. Airbags had been deployed. Police arrived on scene about 10 minutes after the crash, around 12:30 a.m., and an ambulance was on site 5 minutes after the police. France Info Radio reported that one photographer was beaten by witnesses who were horrified by the scene. 5 of the photographers were taken into custody. Later, 2 others were detained, and around 20 rolls of film were taken from the photographers. Police also impounded their vehicles. So there's probably some really terrible pictures of what the accident looked like. There are some pictures that have been released, but they're not fully developed, if I'm remembering correctly. They're like negatives. And they're from pretty far away, so Lord knows someone probably got closer. Firemen also arrived to help remove the victims. Still conscious, Reese Jones had suffered multiple serious facial injuries and a head contusion. The front occupant's airbags had functioned normally, which probably saved his life, while also injuring his face. I don't mean that as a joke, I'm serious. Like, it probably really caused the head contusion and everything. Not caused it, but led to it. Whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. I'm sorry, I haven't had much sleep in the past 2 days. I'm a little all over the place. Diana, who had been sitting in the right rear passenger seat, was still conscious. Critically injured, Diana was reported to murmur repeatedly, "Oh my God." And after the photographers and other helpers were pushed away by the police, "Leave me alone." In June of 2007, the Channel 4 documentary Diana, The Witnesses in the Tunnel claimed that the first person to touch Diana was Dr. Melez, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who chanced upon the scene. He reported that Diana had no visible injuries, but was in shock. Diana was removed from the car at 1 a.m. She went into cardiac arrest, and following external CPR, her heart started beating again. Diana was moved to the SAMU ambulance at 1:18 a.m. and left the scene at 1:41 a.m. She arrived at the hospital at 2:06 a.m. Now, there is some controversy about how long that took. In total, that was, gosh, what is that? I'm so tired, I can't do math right now, but 48 minutes between them putting her in the ambulance and her getting to the hospital. According to the ambulance drivers, it was because of how weakened her heart was and how much they were trying to stabilize her before they moved the ambulance any further. Like, it took them forever. Some people think Diana's death was planned murder by either the royal family or someone else, and they think that whatever happened in that ambulance right then was what killed her. I don't think that. I think the accident killed her. Whether or not it was planned, I don't really have an opinion on. I don't know. But I feel like there was a lot of circumstantial things which we'll get into one more detail that makes me think that it wasn't. I don't know. I'm sorry, I'll continue. al-Fayed had been sitting in the left rear passenger seat and was shortly afterwards pronounced dead. Paul was declared dead on removal from the wreckage. Both were taken to the IML, which was the Paris mortuary, not to a hospital. Paul was later found, this is the detail that makes me think it's a little too circumstantial for it to have been planned, but Paul was later found to have had a blood alcohol level of 1.75 grams per liter of blood, which is about 3.5 times the legal limit in France and equivalent to about 2.2 times the legal limit in Canada, the UK, and the US. Despite rigorous attempts to save her, Diana's injuries were too extensive, and resuscitation attempts, including internal cardiac massage, were unsuccessful. Her heart had been displaced to the right side of the chest, which tore the pulmonary vein and pericardium. Diana later died at the hospital at approximately 4 a.m. Anesthesiologist Bruno Riau, announced her death at 6 a.m. at a news conference held at the hospital. Later that morning, a French interior minister visited the hospital with the French Prime Minister. At around 5 p.m., Diana's former husband, Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, and her two older sisters, Lady Sarah and Lady Jane, arrived in Paris. The group visited the hospital along with the French president and thanked the doctors for trying to save her life. Prince Charles accompanied Diana's body home on Sunday. Her body was taken to the Hammersmith and Fulham mortuary in London for a post-mortem examination later that day. In 1999, a French investigation concluded the Mercedes had come into contact with another vehicle, which was a white Fiat Uno, in the tunnel. The driver of that vehicle has never been conclusively traced, although many believe the driver was, a man by the name of Levin Ton. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, so I do apologize. I believe it was Vietnamese. He claims that when British police asked him to come to the UK to talk to them about the crash, some French officers instructed him not to go there. He, for years, didn't speak out about it. Now he has, and basically said the French police told me to keep my mouth shut about it. Whether or not that's true or why is unknown. However, a representative of Mohammed al-Fayed, Dodi's father, claims that for some reason the police wanted the paparazzi blamed. Now, whether he meant that they wanted them blamed from the get-go or they just didn't want fingers pointed anywhere else, so they wanted it blamed on the paparazzi, I'm unclear on, but that's what his representative stated. It was remarked by Robin Cook, the British Foreign Secretary, that if the accident had been caused in part by being hounded by the paparazzi, it would be doubly tragic. Diana's brother also blamed tabloid media for her death. An 18-month French judicial investigation concluded in 1999 that the crash was caused by Paul, who lost control at high speed while intoxicated. Now, members of the public were, in mourning, invited to sign a book of condolence at St. James Palace. All 11,000 light bulbs at Harrods were turned off and not switched on again until after the funeral. More than 1 million bouquets were left at her home in London, Kensington Palace, while at her family's estate of Althorpe, the public was asked to stop bringing flowers, as the volume of people and flowers in the surrounding roads was said to be a threat to public safety. Basically, no one could drive around there. It was too dangerous. By the 10th of September, the pile of flowers outside Kensington Gardens was 5 feet deep in places, and the bottom layer had started to compost. Early on, it was uncertain if it would be a state funeral, since Diana had lost her HRH status because of her divorce from Prince Charles in 1996. Diana's death was met with extraordinary public expressions of grief, and her funeral at Westminster Abbey, on the 6th of September drew an estimated 3 million mourners and onlookers in London. Guests included representatives of the many charities of which Diana was patron, and attendees included many celebrities, including Hillary Clinton, Pavarotti, George Michael, and Elton John. And as many people probably remember, Elton John had rewritten a version of his song Candle in the Wind for her, known as Goodbye England's Rose. Protocol was disregarded when the guests applauded the speech by Diana's younger brother, Earl Spencer, who strongly criticized the press and indirectly criticized the royal family for their treatment of her. The funeral is estimated to have been watched by 31 million viewers in Britain. Precise calculation of the worldwide audience is not possible, but estimated at around 2.5 billion. It was aired to 200 countries in 44 languages. And I myself remember watching it, actually. I must have been 7 years old, 6 years old, about to be 7. No, 7, about to be 8. And my father woke me up really early in the morning. As we live in America, it happened really early in the morning. And he had a little bed laid out for me on the couch and said, "You'll never forget this day. I watched your wedding, and I'll never forget that day for the rest of my life. And you'll never forget this day for the rest of your life." And he was right. I've never forgotten it. And we laid there and watched the funeral together. After the end of the ceremony, the coffin was driven to Althorpe. Mourners cast flowers. Excuse me. I might have to pause this, and I'm almost done. The coffin was driven to Althorpe, and mourners cast flowers at the funeral procession for almost the entire length of its journey. And vehicles even stopped on the opposite carriageway as the cars passed. In a private ceremony, Diana was buried on an island in the middle of a lake called the Oval, which is a part of the pleasure garden at Althorpe. In her coffin, she wears a black Catherine Walker dress and black tights and is holding a rosary in her hands. The rosary had been a gift from Mother Teresa, who had died the day before her funeral. A visitor center is open during the summer months with an exhibition about her and a walk around the lake. All profits are donated to the Diana, Princess of Wales Memorial Fund, which have continued her charities after her death. So that is the story of the death of Princess Diana. I am so sorry that I have been really out of it and messing up a lot of these words, and that there was a little bit of noise behind me or next to me, but thank you so much for bearing with me, you guys. I know you guys are very understanding, and I'm very grateful. So if you liked this video, please hit the thumbs up button below. If you would like to see, if you have any suggestions, I can't even get it right. If you have any suggestions for videos, true crime or otherwise, please leave those in the comments below. If you have, I need sleep. If you would like to see more videos, please hit the subscribe button as I upload new videos every Wednesday. And other than that, I will see you guys next week, hopefully more rested.